And that starting line was about 335 kilometers from the South Pole. In order to get there, just because logistically we couldn't fly all of our equipment in the aircraft, we had vehicles there. The other reason for the vehicles was in the event of our medevac plan, our medics, our media package, and any other emergencies that might have arise. But as you can tell, these vehicles are from Arctic trucks. These are Land Rovers that are jacked up in steroids. Something that every guy wants to have here in the city of New York. Just go over cars, right? But the cold also caused a problem with the vehicles and the terrain. I think that picture there is one where they had lost a wheel, so you can imagine, and temperatures 40 below, repairing that. And these guys are just amazing how they repair it with a minimal to bubble gum. But we also had an issue where the vehicles, because of the terrain, they managed, not intentionally, they lost 2 poles. So you could only imagine the equipment that's in those poles, tents, sleeping bags, and food. But they managed to find them. Let's see. I think this next slide, is that the next slide there? All right, that's team's injuries. I think this slide here, if I'm not mistaken, is Duncan, the bilateral amputee, great guy, hard to understand when he's talking. And then, so you always have to ask him twice what he said. And then Guy and some of the other guys from the UK team. But we all had our fair share of injuries going into this. I just mentioned my injuries. We all had different injuries, and not to throw in age. I think I was one of the oldest guys, of the injured guys going in there. By far, Ed is far much older than I am. I'm also kind of looking at him. I had lots of plastic surgery. But we had a plenty amount of injuries going into this. Also, certain bilateral amputees, leg amputees, arm amputees, burns, TBI, PTSD. And going with that, it goes to show that there are women in combat in certain roles, and that invisible injury of PTSD and TBI, blindness, burns, and amputations, gunshot wounds. So we had our fair share of injuries and problems, and just imagine adding pulling a poke, skiing, and the terrain weather, adding on to that. Next slide is, this is the throne there, the loo. As they say in the UK, we call it the porta potty. That was our nice loo. We had that when we were all skiing together. Actually, that was nice because it was in a tent. You went in there, you really didn't want to leave. At times I thought about taking an audiobook in there. It was quite nice. We were out of the wind. When we were skiing on ourselves, we just had to use out in the open. And you can only imagine someone with no legs leaning back and trying to do their business. Nevertheless, there's no vegetation out in the open and no berm to go under. So we quickly got very comfortable with each other, especially the ladies there. There was no shame involved between us. You had to do what you had to do. We also had to take that with us, just to make sure that we don't leave that behind. Next slide is, that's me, I think, skiing blind. Obviously, Inga, just an expert in the Arctic region. He had taken a blind man to the South Pole previously, Mark Pola. So I was the second blind guy that he'd taken down there. And together, we came up with this contraption, which was aluminum poles that were tied to the back of his pole with guidelines through them, and they were attached with carabiners to my harness. It served as a guide. Initially, with the sastrugi, I think Ingo's pulling me. And it was quite nice. He didn't know that, but I was and bending my knees. He's just a beast. But then he caught on very quickly, and he made me ski. So it was quite interesting, especially me being from Puerto Rico. You can imagine there's not much snow in Puerto Rico there, none at all. So when they told me that we were going to the South Pole, I initially thought that we were walking there. And I remember being in Colorado in the Springs, and they said that we were skiing. So for the next 30 minutes, I was not listening to the rest of the brief. I was just saying skiing. Wow, man, I hate to ski. So that was quite challenging, plus the terrain. This slide, obviously there's something called sastrugi, which you've heard before, and that is basically when the wind blows, and there was a really bad winter the year before, and just, it was horrible. That created these ripples on the snow and ice, and these ripples went from 3 to 5 feet high. So you can imagine you go over, and when you're coming down the other side, now you got to pull your poke over. And some of these pokes weigh between 150 to 200 pounds, depending on your ability and your size.
Ivan,
yes, sir.
Put it in a bit of perspective. So these sastrugis this year were extraordinary high, and they went on forever. Usually we would have belts of sastrugis that were up to a half meter, maybe 80, 90 centimeters, 2-3 feet maximum on little belts of a kilometer or two in previous years. This time we never saw the end of the sastrugi. So both on the people and the vehicles and the whole logistical operation was suffering a lot under this extraordinary waves of snow. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you. The next slide here, I think this is a picture of just us covered in ice, right? So you can imagine just moisture from your breath, your nose, breathing, just just the heat that you create from your body, and the slightest little wind will create just icicles coming down from you. And some guys even just, it's quite interesting, just pull out your tongue and eat the icicles that's on your beard or coming off your nose. You know, it's one thing that I learned the tough way is to have everything that you can, any skin when there's wind blowing covered up. After a while, if there's no wind, you could actually go out with one layer of clothing. We had great equipment. Helly Hansen was one of our supporters. Doing something like this, you can't go cheap. You have to have something that's been proven and tested. You have to go with the highest quality, and that, like I said, is not cheap at all. But it was quite cold, especially for me. So with the cold, it was a race. We just pushed ourselves. Our injuries. Everybody was so focused and making it to the pole as fast as we could, trying to get a lead on other teams. It was just a strategy game, and you can just imagine. South Antarctica is just wide open, and you can see for miles and miles and miles. So you can see that team, and it's just, you want to catch them, you want to play it smart. But the UK team had a couple of injuries. We all did have some injuries. Kate right there had frostbite on her ear, and she's a very smart girl, but just focused on getting there first on skiing. You just have to take care of yourself. We had folks that had frostbite on their hands. Kate had caught on her ear and her hand. Abby caught on his nose. Therese, one of our girls, caught frostbite on her thumb. So it was. You just have to take care of yourself. Make sure that and each other looking after your buddy. You know. sea level, Cape Town, flying to Noble, and then flying to 10,000 feet. That's why we took a couple of days at the starting line to get kind of acclimatized and used to the altitude, and then add in the snow and the cold. So that had an effect. That is Doc Dan and Eric on this slide, which is our, it was the Australian guide, and he has multiple trips to the South Pole and the North Pole as well. So one of the things about Antarctica or North Pole, South Pole is it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter your degree. Conditions on there affects everybody. And when we think about Prince Harry, Dominic West, and Alex Skarsgård, they didn't have to go with us by no means. They could have stayed in Hollywood or at their palace, being nice and warm. But they agreed to come on this expedition because they believe in the charity and they believe in making a difference. And they were there the same way as us, eating the same nasty custard and going to the same loo as we did. So it tells a lot how genuine, caring, and what they, what they feel for men and women in uniform and for the cause. And I think this is it. Thank you so much for your time.